welcome to the latest edition of the Bison video blog. It's a new month. We switched things up, so we hope everybody gets adjusted to that. I have to as well. It's a little different for me over here on this side of the desk.
I want to see how good you are. If you can do it on the right side or the left side. Yeah.
Speaking of moving from the right side to the left side, we're talking Bison offensive line. See that little segue there?
That's good.
That's how
That's
I operate. We know the three established starters: Joe Lund, Tyler Gimmelstead, and Billy Turner. After that, it seems to be the hottest topic on the blog throughout spring football was who's going to go where. Scott Fuchs was his biggest assignment at figuring out depth and who's going to play, replacing an All-American in Paul Kornick and a four-year starter in Austin Richard. What do you think?
Well, I don't think there's any real huge alarms to be sounded here because I think you got some players who can play. At right tackle, you have Jesse Hines, who's had some experience over the years, and I think he's in the position to take over that spot. Depending on Jeff Jervey now, who had microfracture surgery and has been slow to recover. I don't know if you can depend on him. I think it's one of those I'll see it if I believe it when he's back on the field. And then along with him on the right side,
Jason Pomeranke.
Yeah, Pomeranke, who was a big recruit when he was signed, and I think is developing at an okay level.
Jeff Jervey was Craig Bohl couldn't talk enough about him to us last year at the start of spring football, and he was really upset that Jervey got hurt. And obviously, it was serious surgery. He didn't play, obviously, at all last year. They thought maybe at the start of fall camp he'd go, and then into the season maybe, and it never ended up materializing for the big cat out of Montevideo.
Right, and then it's a tough position to rehab because, as you know, the offensive line has a lot of pounding in every play. Now I'll go over to left guard, which is the other opening. With I think Anthony Lavoie has a really good shot. They like his athleticism and they like his footwork, and he's got a nice demeanor for the offensive line. But look out for Josh Colville. He's getting bigger. He was signed at 260-some out of high school. He's somewhere in the mid-280s now. If he can get in the 290 range at guard, and with the right kind of ability and footwork that he has, he could play a lot. Ty
Beckius played as well a couple years ago. That's when Billy Turner experiment was after the Northern Iowa game where things really got shook up. That was the 14-sack game at UNI. Beckius has some playing experience. Well, he'll fit into that mix, you'd have to imagine as well.
Yes, and I believe Billy Turner has to be the Paul Kornick of this year's team, where Paul Kornick was just such a staple and a presence there, and Billy is pretty good. Now, he's had 2 years as playing as a true freshman and as a sophomore, and if he's really going to make some strides, and coaches say he is, I think this will be the year.
The NFL draft wrapped up this weekend. We saw a cornerback go in the third round from Montana. Tremaine Johnson is one of the best in the FCS. He got picked up by St. Louis. Brian Quick, I think, was the highest drafted FCS player from App State, went to the Rams. I think the immediate things I got hit on Twitter about were, okay, if Johnson went in the third round, and we see where Marcus Williams is at, and we see you talk about Billy Turner, when do we see an NDSU player drafted that high? Phil Hansen obviously was the great former Buffalo Bill that got drafted in the second round. We saw Joe Mays picked in the sixth round a couple years ago. Do those two guys, anybody you see coming down the pipe? I think 2013 or 14, is the draft that everyone's going to look at and say, okay, this is where a Bison may go pretty high.
I think Marcus has a chance. I do. If you're a shutdown corner as a sophomore and some of the athleticism that he possesses, I think the possibility is there, and especially at that position, which in the NFL, if you can find somebody who's big enough, and Marcus, around 200 pounds, I think is big enough. He has a chance. I mean, I'm not saying first rounder, but I would say middle rounders right now to maybe late round. And Billy Turner, same thing.
Yeah.
He may has to get a little bigger, but
it's hard to. He's huge already.
He is, and he's got the forward. He's got such great athletic ability.
Yes.
Just watch him throw a football. I mean, I think he's got the best arm on the team.
Matt Veldman signed a free agent deal with Jacksonville. DJ McNorton on his way to Washington, D.C. with a tryout with the Redskins. You see either two of these guys making an NFL squad come August?
I think out of those two, Matt Veldman has the best chance because he's 6'7" and ran a 4.66 40. And it depends on the camp, and it's just so many factors. You know, what is the tight end position at Jacksonville, and do the coaches like him? If not, can he make health-wise? Can he make a practice squad? As we saw with some players over the years, all it takes is one injury, like Michael Arndt.
Yeah.
One injury, and your hopes are done.
And on the opposite side, one injury, and you're starting, as in Craig Dahl's position, where he was a backup, and then before you know it, he started 15 games for the Rams, which I don't know if anybody saw coming when he graduated from NDSU in 2007. Now, a couple weeks ago, we're not prognosticators, but I think we can now take that total. We can take that title away because we talked about Georgia Southern moving up, and then last Saturday was announced that Georgia Southern is indeed going to take its football program to the next level, to FBS. which surprises me. I know it surprises you as well. The funds are still not there for the Eagles to make it happen. They have a whole football center they want to make happen. To me, it spells it's not great for the FCS, and I wonder where it's going to end, because if I'm Appalachian State, I'm wondering what's stopping us if our chief rival is going to go when we've won 3 national titles in a row early part of this decade.
I don't think it's going to hurt the FCS, because the FCS is all about the playoff atmosphere and the tournament format. So say one of the teams leaves NCAA basketball. Will that affect the tournament? No, it won't. It's still a 68 team now. I lose track. Field that really has its drama in the win or you're done format, and that's the FCS. Whether NDSU won this year or Sam Houston or whoever, Stony Brook wins, it's still the FCS, and I don't think that'll lose its luster.
A few weeks ago I did a blog about the teams recently that made the move from FCS to FBS, but you look now coming in the next couple of years. UMass is leaving, heading to the MAC. Texas State, we don't even know. They played 1 year of FCS football. They don't have a home yet. Georgia State played in the Colonial. They're moving now onto the Sun Belt. We know Texas San Antonio played 1 year with Larry Coker, the former Miami head coach. They're moving on. South Alabama. Charlotte gets a football team next year. They're already talking in 2 years of playing in FBS. This is seems like it's the transitional state to move on to play with the big boys.
Well, trivia question. How many of those teams won FCS titles?
0, I believe.
Or
one.
UMass
Okay.
in 1998 won an FCS title, was a runner-up, I believe, in 06 or something like that. All those others, which is really curious, have not won anything hardly at all on the FCS level. They're almost bypassing Go and going right to FBS. Well, good luck. You need the fan base.
No doubt.
You need the stadium. If South Alabama has that. That's where the Senior Bowl's played. So maybe
San Antonio has that as well. They play in the Alamo Dome, so that's a huge building as well they can fill.
But it's going to be an uphill battle for those teams. I'd give Georgia Southern much more of a chance than any of those others.
Villanova's been talking about, of course, they won a championship.
But they already have a
years
conference
ago.
built in with the Big East, so that's not such a big deal in my opinion.
Now, closer to home in our neck of the woods, with the Big Sky Conferences also moving and shaking. We talk about North Dakota several times, but also it looks like the WAC is going to be no more after maybe today.
Yeah.
San Jose State and Utah State are leaving for the Mountain West. That leaves Idaho and New Mexico State as the only football schools left in that league. Now, if I'm Idaho, I look at it, they've not been good, Jeff. I look at they've won 2 games, 2 out of the last 5 years, and one game in 2007. They're not a football behemoth. They used to play in the Big Sky before they moved up to the FBS. I think it's a no-brainer. They got to swallow their pride, because we don't see it the opposite way. We see going 1AA to 1A. We don't see the opposite way, but I think for their program to survive, that might be the only option left.
I think it is, and that's the risk when you're an isolated team. And when I mean isolated, I mean out in the West or in the Midwest like NDSU. If you go FBS, you need some outs as far as a conference. Now, you look at Texas State, Georgia, San Antonio, South Alabama, all those are in the West to Southwest, and there's some safeguards there. If one league goes, maybe another one will pop up because there's enough schools. Idaho's case, I don't know what you do.
There's nobody left.
There's nobody.
And the Mountain West is not going to take them. Mountain West is trying to get a BCS bid into whatever the football playoff ends up being down the line. They're not going to take an Idaho. I just don't see that happening.
And that's also, now I was in favor of NDSU moving to Division I, but I'm just not in favor of NDSU going FBS at any time soon for that simple factor. If, say you went to the WAC, say Montana went to the WAC 2 years ago like was
Which
rumored.
they were talking about, yep.
Now what?
They'd be hosed.
Yeah.
They would be on that proverbial
Can you say
island.
hosed on a blog?
We can say it on a blog.
Okay.
That's probably the limit of what we can say on the blog. But it's constantly shaking, and I guess I'll ask you before we wrap up here, where is the end? Where is the end game here? Because it's all driven by the TV right now, by the amount of money they want to get and want to get set up for whatever playoff it is. But it leaves a lot of conferences and a lot of schools shaking their heads, because rivalries are thrown out the window with this whole moving and shaking.
I don't think there's an end. You're always going to have talk, you're always going to have movement, and there will be no end.
Does the Missouri Valley get affected by any of this, do you think?
Well, it depends on Youngstown and the Colonial, perhaps, but I think the Missouri Valley will basically stay stable.
That's on the football side of it. The basketball could certainly move. There's been talk of Creighton possibly going to the Atlantic 10. We know what's going on with the Summit League. We've talked about that before.
See, you just keep going on and on.
Well, because it never ends. That's
what
the
I
problem.
told you. I just told you that.
The Oakland and IUPUI are also talking about leaving. We don't know what will happen, but it's something, of course, we'll keep an eye on over the next little bit. Before we go, Amy Anderson won a second consecutive Summit League golf tournament. The NCAA selections will come out on Monday as the night we tape this. It's almost a for certainty she's going to be making her third straight NCAA appearance.
And she has a good chance of making another deep run for the simple fact she's used to national competition. These big courses don't intimidate her, and you know, she's played all over the country, and if she plays well, she can make it another go.
She had a chance last year to win it, the NCAA tournament. She moved in position in the third round, kind of struggled in the fourth round, finished in the top 10, but boy, I wouldn't put anything past her this time around.
And now with a kid with that kind of poise.
Should be fun to watch. Yeah, well, see, there I'm screwing up here as we try to get done. That is the latest edition of the Bison Video Blog. I probably got to go back. For Jeff Kolpak, I'm Dom Izzo.